Christopher Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Not good enough. Not my words, but they belong to another moustache man that we'll talk about. It's the warm-up episode 131. It's your host, Brady Frost, and Tom Bradshaw is with me once again. Tom, how you doing? And have you been tempted to use that tweet out of context at all?
Not yet, but I mean, there's plenty. I've got something in the line of one of his little stories he told on BBC Radio Leeds. So watch out on Twitter for that because that might be quite funny.
You've got me excited. Yeah. Something else that's excited me is we're joined by Elliott Jackson for this one, host of the Championship Chat and Blackburn Rovers reporter for the Lancashire Telegraph. Elliott, how are you doing?
That was a lovely segue, I have to say.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm good, thank you. How are you? Thank you for having me back.
It's all right. I'm good. Can't escape you with podcasts. I was on yours. You're on mine.
That's you were. Yeah, we've tickled each other's back this weekend, which has been nice.
Yeah,
that's how I like to spend my weekend.
Yeah, just metaphorically, we should say we have been doing it over Zoom. Although you know, if we're in person,
I'm quite tall. To be fair, my arms might be long enough to reach.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, I'm 6'5". Not that we need to get into this, but you know,
I'm 6'6", so I do.
Okay.
I feel that I'm like about 6'1", 6'2", and I feel very small right now.
Tell you what, we should, if we were playing centre half for Rovers, they might actually be able to defend some set pieces. Topical. There you go.
I think you're assuming I'm good at defending, Elliott, which is not the case. Let me tell you,
doesn't necessarily need to be the case for an improvement.
Well, that's encouraging. We'll see. Let's get into that then, shall we? Because a trip to Lancashire awaits for Huddersfield Town as they face Blackburn, having beaten Rovers 3-0 on Boxing Day. Again, another quick turnaround. You always get this game, don't you, when you play them twice? It's fair to say John Dale Thomas's team are in a bit of a bad run of form at the moment. 7 losses in 9 matches, and they have conceded the most goals in the division. Elliott will get your insight in a sec. But Tom, it's not been a great start to this running for Town that we talked about, the 1-0 draw at Plymouth that you can hear from the lads reacting to. But are you feeling optimistic about this one and Huddersfield's run?
Yeah, I think if you've listened to the main pod and now you listen to this, I think that question you might as well not ask it me, Brady, because I don't know if I do feel optimistic after listening to what the lads had to say the other night about the reactions to that game and what potentially Town have in store for the rest of the season. But if I'm scratching at the like really picking out the tiny positives, I mean, we didn't lose the game. It's another point on the board. I think these teams that we've got coming up, especially the teams below us, it is one of those where you've got to be like, you don't lose it. The bare minimum is not losing. If you get the draw, then I guess you're still kind of in touching distance with certain teams, or they're not making any ground on you, really. But yeah, I think but we said this about Plymouth, but given Blackburn's form at the moment, I think it's another one where Darren Moore's team have got to be saying, right, come on, there's a chance here to potentially get 3 points away, which has been pretty rare for us this season. So I'm not looking forward to it, Brady, but I think there's a chance for Town. There is a chance.
There's always a chance, Tom. Elliott, as you probably heard from the pessimistic Town fans, including myself and Tom, they'll probably go, well, this is a great game for Rovers to bounce back with. But, we talked about Rovers' form. Town have probably got a good chance at getting a result in this one.
I definitely think so. I think that ultimately, if you're Huddersfield and you're looking at the teams that you're going to have to take points off to get yourself out of trouble, an out of form Blackburn Rovers team that's in free fall and 18th in the table, it's got to be the sort of game that you're targeting points from at this stage in the season, because when you're 21st in the table, there's not that many teams that realistically you can beat or that you'll fancy yourself to get a positive result about. But the way Rovers are going at the moment, the way they are shipping goals left, right and centre, Huddersfield will feel like it's a great opportunity for them to get points. And equally, at home to a team that are 21st in the league, Blackburn will see it as an ideal opportunity to get their season back on track as well. So I think we'll have one set of fans probably meltdown by the end of full time, even if it's a draw, maybe both. But yeah, I think both teams will come into it with I would say confidence, but they're both out of form, so it's kind of like the reverse of that. But there is some expectation that both could get a positive result at the weekend, which is different from recent weeks.
Yeah, it could be a mid-off, as the kids say online. That's very disrespectful to both teams. I suppose Tom probably going to grill you a little bit on Rovers, but I'm going to jump in here and wreck the agenda like a Richard Cosmala does sometimes. But what's kind of gone wrong with Rovers? Because again, they started quite well, and it just seems like they're spiraling. I mean, if they lose, I'm not speaking with Town fans here, but if they lose 3-0 to us, they're clearly not doing well.
Yeah, it's not been going well in December. They had a really good November, actually, and they were on the cusp of the playoffs. But it's quite simple, to be honest. Blackburn have got an incredibly young squad. They've got an incredibly thin squad as well, and they've had terrible injuries. So once the games start to pile up as they do in December, particularly around the Christmas period, the squad just couldn't cope. The quality dipped. Young players lose confidence, and they've not been able to defend all season, to be honest. The upside earlier in the season was the fact that they were going and playing some excellent football, scoring a lot of goals, but also conceding a lot of goals. So they went to Ipswich and lost 4-3 in a very narrow but very entertaining match. They lost 4-1 at home to Leicester, but in a game that wasn't a 4-1 at all. They were in that right until the last 10 minutes, and then Leicester scored 2 goals at the end to take it away. So they were being very competitive, and they were generally beating the teams that were lower than them in the league. And they've always been in around sort of between 8th and 12th in the season, but only a couple of points off the playoffs. Since December hit, they've in particular, as I say, the squad's just not been able to cope with the schedule. You've got the more senior players bang out of form, particularly those at the back, which is sort of the area where Rovers do have the most experience. And then the rest of the team is full of a lot of young players that naturally are not used to going through runs like this. It's the first season for quite a lot of them breaking through, or first senior loans. And therefore, the confidence takes a massive hit when you're on a run like this, and they need the senior players to guide them out. But Rovers' most experienced player is 28, and that is a very worrying fact, and quite a lot of them have been injured. Sam Gallagher came back at the weekend. He's been out for 4 months. Joe Costello played at the weekend for half an hour. He's been out for 3 months. Hedges has been out for 4 months. Dolan's still out and will have been out for 2.5 months by the time he's back. Ainsley Pears, who started the season as first choice goalkeeper, has been out for 4 months. So yeah, they've had bad injuries, which everyone has. I know Huddersfield have obviously had their problems as well, but that is kind of the crux of the issue. And then in terms of on the pitch, it's defending. They've conceded 52 goals in 27 games, nearly averaging 2 a game across the entirety of the season. They've conceded 2 or more goals in 10 of their last 11 games. And particularly from set pieces, they've just got no ability to defend them with any confidence. They went to West Brom at the weekend, aside, particularly good at home, particularly good at set pieces. And they score, from a long throw-in, which bounces in the 6-yard box before it's headed in at the back post. The goalkeeper's been really, really poor in the last month, particularly Leopold Wallstead. I personally think he won't be in the goal at the weekend. I think Pears has had 221 games where he's played 90 minutes in the last sort of 10 days. So I kind of expect a change in goal. So I think it was the October the 1st against Leicester where Pears broke his metatarsal. So that'll be his first competitive game for 3.5 months. So that's one to keep an eye out on. And yeah, defensively, they've just really, really struggled. And the injuries coupled with the fixture congestion has just really, really seen them go into freefall.
Encouraging. Well, I suppose if you're a Town fan, that's kind of music to your ears, really. Tom, we normally do a fan phone in. I'm gonna pass the hosting duties to you here. And Elliott, although you've given a lovely answer for 2 minutes, I would describe this as grilling time. Wouldn't you agree, Tom?
I would, but I'd also say that Elliott has almost answered every question in that brilliant monologue there. But I guess one thing you didn't really touch on, I guess during this pretty terrible run for Blackburn, given the circumstances, I think one thing as well that's amazing about the league this season is the fact that Blackburn were right up there, and in the space of a month, they're potentially on the precipice of getting dragged into some sort of relegation battle. It's so tight this year, isn't it? But I guess during that run, has anyone kind of kept the form up? Is there anyone still performing in the squad that you think could hurt Town on Saturday?
Yeah, Sam Smodics obviously is the Championship's top goal scorer. His levels haven't dipped. He's been the beacon of light. He's been the leader for this team, the talisman, all season since Ben Brereton Diaz left in the summer on a free transfer. He's really stepped up to the plate. Didn't play at the weekend due to illness. Fully expect him to be recovered and ready to play against Huddersfield at the weekend. He has been really, really, really top draw for Rovers. The way he didn't have the greatest debut season. He came in for not an insignificant fee either from Peterborough, having scored 7 goals for a team relegated to League One. Bradley Dack was just back fit, massive Rovers fans' favourite, and there's a lot of questions whether he was good enough to usurp Dack, really, because Dack wasn't really getting a look in under Thomason. And, he got dropped at the start of 2023 and he wasn't playing, and then he came back into the team, and ever since then, it's really clicked for him. He had a really good end to last season, and then this season he's been fantastic. He really is. He's now vice-captain since Lewis Travis moved on in January on loan to Ipswich. So he's taken more of a leadership role as well as one of the more experienced players at 28. And his finishing's come on so well. And probably the biggest thing that he offers Rovers, which they really did miss at the weekend, is so good at making runs in behind. So he doesn't play up front. He's a number 10. He very much plays, drops deep, comes to link. He plays almost as a third central midfielder, playing that sort of left number 8 channel or as a number 10. But he's constantly probing and going beyond the back line, so it stops anyone from playing a really high line, and they didn't have that at the weekend at West Brom. So West Brom literally shoved up right to the halfway line, and that means obviously you can press Rovers really high because they do want to play out from the back. But if you've got nothing running behind you, you can just stand on the halfway line, press the opposition, and I think that's what happened a lot actually in the reverse fixture, where Rovers stopped running in behind, and Huddersfield got the tails up, pressed right up the pitch, won the ball back really high. And once they went 1-0 up through that Jaheim Headley goal, which was probably the first of Walstead's number of mistakes that we've seen, I thought that was again a key point. They did have Smodics on the pitch that day, but he is really good at running behind. Even though he's not a striker, the amount of goals you'll see where he's one-on-one with the goalkeeper or he's sprinting in behind. So he's been fantastic, and shackling him will definitely be the biggest task for Huddersfield.
I guess, Town have struggled obviously this season to kind of score goals, basically. Sounds like Blackburn at the moment are struggling from set pieces. And Town, you'd say one of their potential positives is they've got players in that team who do threat from corners and free kicks. Why have Blackburn struggled so much recently with that? What's happening there?
It's really hard to put your finger on because they've had injuries, as I said. Dom Hyman, who was their best centre-back, has been injured. He's come back. He hasn't looked great, if I'm being honest. He hasn't looked the same player after 2 months out of an ankle injury. So he's struggling for form. Hayden Carter, who had a brilliant end to last season, struggling for form. And as I say, there has been a lot of chopping and changing because of injuries at the back. But I don't really know. It's hard to say. They've got a goalkeeper that is terrible from crosses. Walstead had a really good run in December, and I think there's a lot to work with there. And he has got some really good qualities. He's really good at playing out from the back. He's a decent shot stopper, but he's always been susceptible from corners, and then that has particularly become a bigger issue. So I think that creates nerves. It creates anxiety, doesn't it? Especially if you as a defence are struggling and are out of form. So, if I was Huddersfield in Walstead's in goal, I'd be getting Mikael Halleck to just stand on him and just whip balls at his head and see what happens, because that is honestly the best route to goal against Blackburn at the minute. Teams are not having to carve them open to get an opportunity. They are not having to work hard for their goals, and Blackburn are pretty generous at the moment. So it's hard to put your finger on one exact thing, but I think the goalkeeper, injuries and a lack of continuity at the back have probably all sort of come together to create this big problem for Rovers.
It's a bad run, and when you look at it in a stats form, it's pretty as bad as what Darren Moore's figures are running at the moment. And there's a lot of Town fans kind of calling for his head at the moment. With Dal Thomason, do you think he's in a bit of a sticky situation? Is there calls for him at the moment, or are people more kind of, do they realise the situation, what he's got to play with injuries, the how young the squad is, that kind of thing as well?
Yeah, it's interesting. The narrative's definitely shifted over the last month. There's definitely more scrutiny on Jon than there was before. But I don't think he is ultimately if you had to list the issues with Blackburn Rovers, he's nowhere near the top of that list because of the main issues that they've got behind the scenes with finance. I'll just give a brief overview for those that obviously won't be aware. So Rovers are still owned by Venky's, who you remember helped get them relegated from the Premier League, then down to League One. Well, they're still here. They're still in India. They're still paying the checks, or they were until recent. So there was some new legislation in India with the government, the Indian government putting new tax laws on any money basically going out of the country to stop, protect their assets, ultimately to stop people funneling money abroad. So that's made it incredibly difficult for Rovers, for the Venkies to put money into Blackburn. So they are still paying the checks. They are still covering costs in terms of wages, things like that. There's not been any issues with that, but they're having to go through the high courts of India to push the money through just to fund, not talking about transfers, I'm talking about utility bills, I'm talking about player wages, the tax man, etc. So that's created a real issue because Rovers haven't got much to play with. They had to cut their budget in the summer by 15%. They're also down on numbers. And as I say, the squad is incredibly young as a result because they promoted academy graduates to fill those holes. And the academy is, it's still a category 1. It's very much the biggest asset the club has. But that short term creates problems. And when you've got 3 players at 28 and the rest is under, that's a big problem. So there's a lot of unrest about the sort of cash flow problems at the club. Yondal Thompson's been very vocal about that and the need to get some signings in. So you've kind of got an unhappy head coach that's making a lot of comments in the media about the need for transfers, the need for experience. You've got a club that just has felt quite disconnected. I think there's always been a bit of a disconnect since they got relegated from the Premier League about attendances, about ticket pricing, about comms at the club. And so I think Jon coming in has almost papered over those cracks because he did such a great job. To finish 7th and miss out on goal difference was a massive overachievement last year. And what he's done to have them near the playoffs this season has again been a massive overachievement. This is probably the first time in his Blackburn career in 18 months where you'd say he's probably underachieving at the moment, or certainly the worst run they've been on under him. That's for sure. So he had a lot of credit in the bank. And there's a lot of mitigating factors where he can point to this, and this, and this is why this is happening. I think a lot of the fans are starting to go a bit frustrated because I think they would like him to take a little bit more responsibility. But there is no doubt that the issues he points to are completely valid and fair. But there is also an argument, and again, a valid one, that he isn't doing enough to arrest the slide at the moment, and perhaps there's more he could be doing. So there's not really much scrutiny. I don't expect him to get sacked. I don't think Rovers could afford to sack him potentially, even if they wanted to. But I don't think he is an issue. He is the issue at the club ultimately. The problem is if this result, obviously, if it keeps coming and coming, the only thing you can change is the head coach. So there's a lot of pressure. They've got 4 home games in a row now, starting with Huddersfield. They play QPR, they play Stoke, and they've got an FA Cup tie with Wrexham. If you can't get your season back on track, with no disrespect to those 4 teams, you are looking at a relegation battle. And I don't, for one second, really believe Rovers will go down or get dragged into it. But the form is relegation. Like, it's relegation form at the moment. So it's all right me saying that, but until something changes, then ultimately you have to view it that they're in big trouble at the moment.
Yeah, it can move quick, can't it, as well? I think you don't really, like we're saying, how tight it's been this year, and especially with kind of Wednesday really picking up a bit of form. All of a sudden that gap's getting smaller, and if somehow Town pick up a bit of form, last week we were talking to Gab Sutton about this, and it's like you look at those teams above Town at the moment, and really kind of Blackburn and maybe Preston are on that kind of downward trajectory at the moment with the form they're in and things, and the other ones maybe you think are gonna. That's a big game. The QPR and Stoke and obviously Town, big games in the league, aren't they? And then a good cup run's always good, isn't it? But when you welcome in blooming Hollywood, it's going to be interesting.
7,000. They've just released it. They've got 7,000 away allocation in the Blackburn, in the Darwin end. So that's gonna, that'll be a lively one that's a Monday night. So that's a week on Monday.
Yeah, is that on TV as well, Elliot?
It's been moved for BBC Wales, so that's why it's on. So it's not been picked by BBC or ITV, but it's on BBC Wales. So it's a Monday night job.
Yeah, cool. Finally, quick one. That's one of the best views from the other side we ever had, Brady, that, isn't it? Score prediction. Oh, no, we'll do that at the end. So, actually, sack that. We'll do that at the end, won't we? There we go. Thanks, Elliot. Nice one.
There we go. Nice. Well, I'll give you a bit of a breather, Elliot, because that was very thorough, which we appreciate. It is time for Kwana's question. So, I didn't actually do this as Kwana's question. I tweeted it out. I don't know. Anyway, doesn't matter. We asked you a question. It was ahead of the previous show. We want to know. Saturday was obviously the club's women at the game, dedicated fixture highlighting female inclusion. So we want to know what female friend, family member, or partner you go to the game with and why you're giving them a shout out. It doesn't necessarily have to be town, because some of the responses we got weren't town, but I just thought things are a bit doom and gloom, so let's have a bit of positivity, shall we? So we'll kick off with this one first. Andy Firth, he says, I go to every game with my wife and 24-year-old daughter, both proud Terriers. My daughter is very passionate and knowledgeable about football, great understanding and in-depth insight, a genuine fan of men and women games, and frustratingly always beats me at fantasy football. I like that. Joff Ward says, my daughter Annabelle is a season ticket holder for the first time this year. Clearly the sport is still male dominated, so I'm proud she feels comfortable at the John Smith Stadium and hope she continues to love it and Huddersfield Town. And Scott Bradley says, I take my mum, who is tagged in this, loves to watch the football and socialising before and after the game too. So that's nice and wholesome. Or as some Town fans will probably say, Brady continues his woke agenda. Tom. Yeah, it can be both. What's wrong with positivity? It was Blue Monday the other day. So, Tom, what's your, who do you want to give a shout out?
Well, firstly, I wouldn't be calling Brady woke when he's sitting here wearing a bearskin jumper. Then,
100%.
Come on, that's far from it, isn't it? But I probably maybe not only a town, but me gran moved to Huddersfield about 50, 60 years ago or something. And she started taking my dad to watch Town. So if it wasn't for her, I might not be a Town fan. You never know. I sat with her when I was living up in Huddersfield. Used to go to the games with her, sit with her, my dad. Then my sister would come quite a few times. But Granny B, big shout out to Granny B, who I think when we got promoted to the Prem, I think we worked it out. She'd been going for something like 55 years or something like that, which is fair play. Well done. Takes a lot, doesn't it, to stick around with Town for that long?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely true. I think she should get a medal. No, fantastic. Elliot, what about you? We're having a bit of an interesting one before we recorded. What's your story?
Yeah, so I don't have anyone particularly in the family that's a massive football fan, despite obviously my career and my passion. It's mainly come through my dad and through other male family members. However, I do have a 1-year-old daughter who I will be absolutely bucking that trend with, whether she likes it or not. So I'm looking forward to that. She can't walk at the moment, so Project LMY is currently on pause, but we will be working towards that. But I did manage to convince my wife to go to Wembley the day after I got married in the summer. Because for those that don't know, I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan, and I wasn't expecting to need to do this because they quite famously lost 4-0 in the first leg to Peterborough. They then went and, obviously, the miracle of Hillsborough, Darren Moore, of course, in charge, beat Peterborough 5-1 on penalties, and then got to Wembley. We were getting married on Sunday, the 28th of May, and that game was then arranged against Barnsley, of course, where I actually live, to make it to add another layer to this. For the 29th. So I managed to convince my wife to come with me. So we went to Wembley the day after we got married. We got married in York. So we got the train about 11 o'clock in the morning, the day after our wedding to Wembley, straight down to King's Cross, and then got the tube over. And she'd only ever been to one other Wednesday game. I took her the last game of last season at Derby as well, with a very small chance that Wednesday could have still got autos at that point. I managed to convince her to do that. There was the allure of a trip to a Gordon Ramsay restaurant and a hotel stay in London afterwards, but she thoroughly enjoyed it, in fairness. And I definitely think if something like that happened again, she'd definitely come back with me. But given my job, I've not had that many opportunities to go back myself either this season. So yeah, that's probably the best story I've got. But yeah, I'm definitely will be booking the trend with Maya, who, as I say, is. I keep telling her when the TV changes, she plays with the remote, and when it just happens to fall onto Football League highlights, I'm telling her it's a sign.
Yeah, no, I like it, and like you say, your wife clearly loves you if she's going the day after, and it was a positive result for you. So
all her family are Wednesdayites as well, so she everyone was going, so a bit of peer pressure played its part there as well.
Hey, not wrong with that if it's channeled in the right way. Fair enough. I'll probably shout out Isla for this. I feel like I really catfished her with football, because when we started dating, I think I've said this before on the pod, but it was the week. I think it was like one of the first weeks we were like meeting up and stuff. And it was the week where Liverpool did that amazing comeback against Barcelona, and obviously Tottenham did the same thing with Ajax 3-2 in the last minute. And she saw me going like, "Oh my God, this is incredible! This is incredible!" She was like, "Oh, I'd really like to go to a game with you." So we went to Huddersfield Town, Reading. Obviously, another dynamite game. It was 2019. Mark Hudson was in temporary charge. We lost 2-0, and I remember the most exciting thing.
Sorry, are you still together?
We are still together, yeah. 5 years. 5 years, yeah. She must love me. But with that, the most exciting thing was Phil Hodgkinson got booed at full time. That's the most exciting thing. I don't know. To be fair, she's still come to games with me, and my sister's just got a job in sports, and she's been coming to quite a few games. We went to see Wakefield AFC versus Nostell Miners Welfare, and she got right stuck in. So she's proper going a bit hardcore with the football now. So that's why we wanted to do it. It's about who you go to the game with, particularly when Town aren't doing the best. It's about who you go with. I think it's important to remember that. Speaking of which, if you're going to the game this weekend, the away game, you probably have time to get an order in from Magic Rock Brewing, who are our sponsors for this one. Don't forget, you can get 10% off any orders you do online with us with our code AHTTC10. You'll see it on the bottom if you're watching on YouTube. Right, what we're going to do then is we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about Huddersfield. Gentlemen, right, we've had some positivity before the break. I don't think it's going to be so positive now, because we kind of do have to address the main talking point. No, I'm not going to ask you about Kevin Nagel's video where it looks like he's in a seedy lounge talking about his tweet. I'm going to ask you about Darren Moore, because Elliott, your podcast, the Championship Chat, did a tweet that seemed to catch the attention of Town fans, so I'm going to highlight it here. It is Darren Moore's record in charge of Huddersfield Town in all competitions thus far. So here it is. Played 21, won 3, drawn 9, lost 9, goals for 19, goals against 38, clean sheets 3. And it ends the tweet with saying, "How much longer can the Terriers afford to give the 49-year-old?" Thinking emoji like that. So, Elliott, that's my question. As a neutral, we're going to get Tom and my thoughts. But what do you think?
Typical engagement bait, that thinky face, isn't it? I blame George for that. I take no responsibility for that tweet. That's not good, is it? Like, when it's spelled out like that, it's just not good, is it? 3 wins in 21 is pretty horrendous. We were talking about this a little bit on the pod yesterday, weren't we, Brady? That it's just the draws that have sort of killed Huddersfield a little bit. When we think about the relegation picture in total, Sheffield Wednesday obviously the form team, sort of down in the bottom third at the moment. And they've just been on a run of 5 wins and 8 in the league. I don't think Huddersfield have got a run of 5 wins and 8 in them at the moment, certainly with the current squad, and that is probably the biggest concern. Do I think Huddersfield could go 5 games unbeaten? Yeah, I do, but there'll probably be 3 draws in there. And at this point, you're almost better losing games but winning them, because draws don't really get you anywhere. It doesn't build much momentum. It doesn't build much feel good. I mean, if you want to flip that stat on their head, they've lost what is that? Just over 30% of their games under Darren Moore. That's not horrendous for a team in the bottom 4, but it's the lack of wins that is what does you, and the lack of goals as well. And as I say, as a Wednesday fan, pretty well tuned in with Darren Moore's tactics. It's never going to be glamorous football. It's going to be more efficient. I don't think Huddersfield have got the best squad. I came on probably a couple of months ago now and said similar. I still believe it still is. They probably are where they should be relative to the squad. But there is a way to do this. And again, we were discussing this on the pod yesterday, that I do think there is a growing shift in mentality of football fans, where results will always be the be-all and end-all ultimately. But the amount of fans, I think, that are willing to compromise slightly on results in exchange for good football, I think is definitely a growing trend. I don't know whether it's because of the cost of living crisis, and so ticket prices are more expensive. And people want to go to football to be entertained. And I think that is a growing trend within football. You look at someone like Preston at the moment, there's a lot of discontent with Ryan Lowe. Are Preston underachieving? Not really. They're about where they should be, albeit they started the season really well, then had a terrible run of form. But if you jumble the results up, they're about where they should be. The problem is they're not going up, they're not going down, and they don't play great football. And I think if You look at Plymouth, for example, and I know, Brady, you were saying it wasn't a great game at the weekend against Huddersfield. Plymouth are in a very similar position to Huddersfield, but it's a completely different mood because they go and score goals. They're brilliant at home park, and they've got exciting attacking players. They're a lot poorer than Huddersfield are at the back, but they'll go and win games 4-3 rather than draw 1-1, which is what Huddersfield are doing at the moment. And I think that is where the discontent comes from Huddersfield Town fans. It's the draws, it's the style of football, it's the blandness. It's a bit mundane, isn't it? But at the same time, the squad is full of bland, mundane players in bulk. And I'm not saying there isn't times where Darren Moore can get more out of the team, and whether the formation is really suited to the players he's got, I think is debatable, given you've only really got one striker available. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm kind of like, I understand why fans would be quite apathetic and quite bored, but at the same time, I don't really think he's performing that horrendously versus what I would expect them to be achieving with the squad they've got.
No, it's a good point. I suppose, as Tom kind of touched on earlier in the pod, there is pressure. Certainly, some fans have had enough with him and think he should go. Kevin Nagel has come out and said, quite defiantly that that's not going to happen. It's not at this moment anyway. I mean, do you think if it carries on like this, there's kind of no option? I mean, even if for whatever reason they do stay out of the relegation zone, say Wednesday don't continue that momentum and they finish 21st, do you think there's an argument to say Moore should go based on what we've seen so far?
Not if they stay up. I think there's an argument that he should have a full summer to. If you give him a 3-year contract, I do think you should believe in that. You've given him a 3-year contract. He's not done anything that we didn't expect. Like, he was never going to produce swashbuckling football, and he's not got a track record of instantly improving players. There's not loads of players at Sheffield Wednesday where you can say that they instantly improve. What you can say is over time, he managed upwards very well, which he had to do with Dejphon Chansiri, who's an absolute nutcase. And clearly Kevin Nagel, I'm not comparing the two, but probably there is a bit of management upstairs as well, because I'm sure he wouldn't appreciate, while he'll never say in the media, tweets at full time screaming, "This is not good enough." Now, he can play it off in the media and say it's everyone associated with the Huddersfield Town badge. It don't look great. It's not good optics, is it, for your owner to be tweeting that about the team, the manager? It increases the pressure. But he is very good at managing upwards. He is very good at stabilising a club and growing sustainably and slowly. And unfortunately, as boring as that is, it's probably what Huddersfield need. So if you've given if you're going to have strength in your conviction and give him a 3-year deal, then I think you kind of have to see that through if they stay up. Now, if they go down, then you could argue that maybe is a slight underachievement. Although, to be honest, I had them staying up in my predictions at the start of the season, but that was mainly down to Neil Warnock and mainly down to how bad I knew Sheffield Wednesday, QPR and Rotherham were, who were my bottom three and are obviously the current bottom three. I think Wednesday are a better side than Huddersfield under Danny Reel, personally, at the moment. Whether they can make that points difference up and whether January impacts both teams, I don't know at this point. But Darren Moore has also then got a history of stabilising and getting a club out of League One. So I don't know. It depends what Huddersfield Town fans want. And I am not here to stand on a soapbox and tell them that they should put up with being bored at football, because it's an entertainment business and you go to be entertained. But the honest reality is this is kind of what I expected from Darren Moore. This is kind of what he does. But you probably will see more success than failure over long term. It's whether you want to bite the bullet or not, because it can be like pulling teeth at times.
Mm-hmm. Good point. And Tom, I suppose I'll ask you. You've heard what Elliott said. Are you willing to bite the bullet? I'm not gonna. I don't have to out what you said in the chat, but you were very frustrated after the draw at the weekend.
I think Elliott's talking about the entertainment value and stuff. Town fans have probably been bored at football games since 2017, since the year we got promoted with Wagner, when we saw that Gengen pressing stuff. Because as soon as we got promoted, we had a few games where he went full throttle, but then I think he realised you can't do that in the Premier League against certain teams. It got a lot more conservative. And then since Wagner, it's been, Carlos Corberán. So you enjoy it when you win. It's like with Warnock. When Warnock was winning, it was very direct. It was still exciting football, but Town hardly saw any of the ball. But because it was direct and we were winning, you kind of get on board with it. But when it's just, I think the one thing that's kind of keeping more in as well is we're going about these draws. I think the draws are keeping him in at the moment for me because, like you say, it's not a loss, is it? If you're selling it as he's only lost basically 40% of his games so far, then it doesn't sound terrible. It's such a difficult thing because I would like to put up with it and I would like to see someone in that role for 3 or 4 years for once, rather than it being a year to 2 years and then they're gone. I just think he's lost a lot of fans already. And that's my worry. The way he's playing, the way the football is being played at the moment, you're not going to get him back anytime soon, because unless he starts winning, that's the only solution, because the football isn't exciting. No one's come away from that game on Saturday saying they've enjoyed it, to be honest, are they? So I think for me still, it's another one as well, Brady. Who are you bringing in that you think is going to change what Town are going to end up doing at the end of this season? And you can't say Neil Warnock.
I don't know, because you see, again, I don't think these are realistic, but obviously, like, I've seen Paul Heckingbottom and John Eustace be mentioned, but I don't know if they take that project. And I agree with Elliott.
I would be surprised.
You wouldn't be surprised?
I would be surprised if either of those two were interested, if I'm being completely honest.
But yeah. I honestly don't think those two come in and do any better with the squad.
This is my main point. I agree with you. I think the squad, you can't overlook that the squad is not a great squad. There's not a lot of guaranteed goals in that squad. And I think the only argument you can make is I'm not sure why they're playing 3-5-2 when they've got a squad where the most exciting players in attack are probably wingers. I think that's where Darren Moore probably should be looking at the squad and going, this is what suits my players better, rather than this is the system I play and people need to fit to that, because playing Koroma and Thomas with the back to goal is not getting the best out of their skill set. And there is a world where you can develop Josh Koroma, and he has been a 10-15 goal as a wide forward in a 4-3-3. Whether that exposes you too much defensively is a debate, but there is ways that this team could be more attacking and potentially could use the tools it has got better.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I'm probably going to repeat myself for anyone who listened to the Championship chat, but what I'm struggling with, it's difficult to form an opinion on Darren Moore, because I think there's so many excuses. Like I'm not sure about you, Tom, but I can't really work out if he's good enough or not, because I just think there's so many things you can point to excuse it away. It's almost, we've had over 20 games with him in charge, but I just think it's, like you say, I don't know anyone who comes in with the squad the way it is. And you look at the injuries. I remember Stephen Chicken did something in the We Are Terriers Substack about, like, the amount of people we're missing. And it's quite a strong 11. It's arguably not Town starting 11, but they're players who would come in and play minutes, and you wouldn't, maybe not so much the key players, but you could swap certain positions, and I could arguably be Town's strongest side. I just. It's hard because there's a lot of excuses to make, and I think we've all kind of said it, but the difficulty is it's just years of underinvestment catching up with us, and he's kind of, same with Nagel. I do agree with you, Elliott, that I don't think that helps. I think it's good that Nagel comes out and, is very vocal with Towns, and fans like to see that, but then also I do think, however you mean it, tweeting not good enough at full time is you're frustrated.
Problems, is it?
It's not the way you go about it. In my opinion, it's not the way you go about it. So I just think that's pandering. I'd argue that's pandering to the fans a little bit, and it undermines the manager. Like, look, and at the moment, some Town fans will be like, "Well, I don't care because, like, we don't like Darren Moore, so you can undermine him." But I don't think that's good, in my opinion. So it's difficult. I think the only way that gets fixed is, Nagel talked about having 6 signings by the end of January. We do need 4. Like, I just, that Plymouth game for me, it was so obvious that we needed a striker. And then there's you've signed a guy. Again, I think this is the thing people are trying to say, like, oh, he's that injured? Like, what's going on at Town? The guy hasn't played proper minutes since October. And, like, we're in a situation where a striker who we've signed who hasn't played since October has to come in and be the person to fix it. No wonder he's going to pick up an injury. Championship's a tough division. Sounds like he's going to be all right for this game, but it was just so obvious. And I looked at that bench. The worst thing we could do is concede, and we kind of just kept lumping it forward. And there was a foul in the build-up for our goal, but even there, you look at that bench and like, who's going to come on to change it? Like, there's just no options. So I don't think the football has been inspiring. And like you say, Elliot, you told us when we had you on previously, it wasn't going to be, but I just don't know. It's the squad. It's really the squad. I know people have said Neil Warnock got a good job, but like, I think the squad's weaker than what Warnock had in some respects. So,
and I think with Moore though, Brady, as well, you look at the 3 other jobs he's had, and he's had, for the level they've been at as well, he's had squads that are competitive in those divisions, and he's done really well there. And that's the thing in the back of my mind where I think you do stick with him and give him time and give him a proper window, because look, hold your hands up, Town potentially are going to go down this year. I think realistically, if it's got to be 4 very good signings coming in now that really change this squad, but then it's this summer where you give him that summer to build the squad that he can work well with. Because I'll just go back to I just don't know who Town are getting in that do any better at the moment. We can't just keep going season to season, bringing in a Neil Warnock to keep us up. Do you know what I mean? To keep us up last minute. Say like, Town bring. Oh no, I'm trying to think of someone who's at Gary Rowett or something. Like Gary Rowett might come in, and because I feel like he does that at clubs. He comes in as a good 2 or 3 seasons, good start. So it's so difficult at the moment because of the years of just boring football we've already had ahead of this.
Yeah, I mean, Elliot, obviously we're Town fans and we're biased, but I just think, and maybe it's me being pessimistic, but I think you might agree with me. I just don't think it's an attractive job at the moment either. Like, even whoever comes in, I don't think it's a particularly attractive one, and I'm not sure they could do a better job.
It's not an attractive squad to work with, I don't think. I don't think you immediately look at that squad and think it's underperforming, which is what most managers would like to think when they're coming into a job where a manager's been sacked. As I said, I do think maybe you could utilise the players that are at your disposal better with a formation change, because as I said, I don't think 3-5-2 particularly suits Huddersfield. You don't have a natural left centre back if Nakatoma's not fit. They've obviously got Helik, who's pretty perfect for the middle. They've just not got the wide forward. They've got wide forwards in the squad, and they haven't got strikers. Like, they've not got strikers. It just doesn't. That's the bit that doesn't make sense. I think Gary Rowett's probably not a bad shout for one person that might take it and might be able to stabilise and keep you up. But it's not going to be great football. Like, it's not going to be. It depends. What do you want as a Huddersfield fan? And I can't tell you what the answer to that is, because ultimately it's specific. All I can say is, I do think there's a shift, as I say, in mentality, and fans are starting to want more entertainment as much as results. It's really difficult. I don't think it's not a badly sized club for the Championship. It's Yorkshire teams are always very well supported. I do think that there's a lot of good infrastructure at Huddersfield, but we don't really know enough about the owner to say how much is he going to get backed, whoever would come in, how much influence can he have, because he's given Moore a 3-year deal. So I suppose if he's not going to back Darren Moore in the transfer market, then why would he go and back another manager almost? Like, you've got to go on the evidence you've got. And if they don't have a good January, then there's not much suggestion to say, well, if they brought someone else in the summer, if they do stay up, then they'll have a really good go at it, and it'll be different. Because why would it be different? It would do it with Darren Moore. You've given Darren Moore a 3-year deal, so clearly you think he's the right man. So you would chuck out all your eggs at that basket to make it a success, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and it's a classic thing. It's like, if you sack him early, that just reflects poorly on you. Even though Darren Moore, like, there is calls, I think if Nagel sacks him after getting rid of Neil, that looks poorly on him. Whereas in the summer, perhaps that's different. So, no, it's a really good point. I suppose, Tom, was there anything you wanted to add before I kind of moved on to our score predictions? No. No, it's a difficult one. I suppose the only positive we can say is, I think Nagel, I do think his heart's in the right place. I think it's just it's probably adjusting to the football. And it's the same with the managers, to be fair, even Darren Moore. Like, I know it's when you're a new coach, you don't want to come in and be like, I'm going to play turgid or horrible football. Of course, you're going to say, I'm going to play exciting attacking football. But I would say every manager that's probably come in has said that. And I just don't think we have the players to do that, to win games. Look at Carlos Colbran. We were talking about that yesterday, Elliott. That's a classic example. I'm going to play similar to Bielsa. Oh, wait, I don't have the squad for it, so I'm going to be defensively solid and try and win games.
I do think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. But, maybe we're talking a bit more positively at the start of February with those signings. Who knows? Let's come back to this game then. Elliott, what is the best way for Town to approach this match to get a win? You talked about the set pieces, but what are kind of Blackburn's weaknesses?
Yeah, lob a lot of balls into the box. A lot of set pieces at the goalkeeper. Get Mikael Hellick to go stand on Leopold Walstead if he's in goal and just chuck a load of set pieces in. Genuinely, that teams do not have to work hard to cut Blackburn open at the minute. I don't think Huddersfield particularly have the players to play swashbuckling football, but Rotherham don't either, and they went and got a 2-2 draw because the goalkeeper had a very good game, Victor Johansson, who's one of the best goalkeepers in the league. They scored at good times. One of them was a howler from the goalkeeper from a corner, and the other one was a cross into the box, which Tom Eaves headed in. That is genuinely the best way to expose them. They've got a soft centre. Rovers will be the better team. They'll play lovely football. They'll probably score. It's whether they score enough goals for the dominance in open play versus how soft they are from set pieces, corners, balls into the box. And that's how the game will go. Rovers will dominate the game. They'll have all the ball. They'll create chances. They'll be the better team, in inverted commas. But if they don't defend the box well enough, Huddersfield can cause them problems.
There we go. Tom, I have a friend who's Serb Croat, and she ripped me for how I pronounce our new striker. So I'm going to call him, Radas, as we've been calling him.
Yeah,
he's got to start. I mean, even if he's, I know it's a precaution, but we need a striker. I'm sure you share the same sentiment with that.
Yeah, I think when you look at the highlights from his other clubs, and you're looking at what can hurt Blackburn on Saturday, some of the headed goals he scored this season, absolutely awesome. So you'd just be throwing him on for that, just for the set pieces. Maybe saying, if you need to take it easy doing all the other work, take it easy. But as soon as we get in that box, do what you've been doing in the last few years. So yeah, hopefully he's fit, Brady.
Hopefully he's fit. If not, you don't hear the magic sponge much anymore. Let's hope we can have one of them. Okay, chaps, we did have some mailbag questions, so let's get our match predictions for this one. This will be very telling, and let's have a little bit of fun to end. Tom, I'll come to you first. What are you going for?
2-2 and Radders and Hellick. Another draw. 2-2. Another more draw.
More draw. Darren draws. Elliott?
I think Rovers will get back on track, if I'm being completely honest. I think Huddersfield will score. I think it will be 2-1 to Rovers. I think that Rovers are a better team than Huddersfield, is my honest belief. And even in the games where they've been poor, like the Rotherham game, they were the miles better team. They were miles better than Rotherham. It's whether they put the chances in the back of the net and whether Huddersfield get enough set piece opportunities, balls into the box to cause them issues. You can bully them. I mean, they bullied them at the John Smiths and they beat them 3-0. So I'm sure a lot of people are sat there thinking, I'm a bit overconfident. I don't feel confident about it at all. But I felt as good as Huddersfield were on that day, on Boxing Day, I thought it was as much Rovers being poor and doing just terrible things against a team that was out of form in Huddersfield at the time than it was Huddersfield being brilliant. I think you've really missed Bergzorg. I don't think he's played, has he, since he came off against Rovers? He really caused Rovers a lot of problems. His pace against Carter was a real issue for Rovers. So without him, I think that weakens Huddersfield undoubtedly. So I'm going to go 2-1. But again, I think this game will be very similar to the Rotherham game that they drew 2-2 on New Year's Day, where they'll have a lot of the ball, they'll create chances, but they're not very efficient in front of goal, albeit they've got the Championship's top scorer. There's a lot of pressure. The fans will be on their backs, I'm sure, if they don't start well or if they concede a soft early goal. And Huddersfield will naturally, Huddersfield were probably I thought Rovers were probably the better team in the first 15 minutes at the John Smith Stadium. The difference was Huddersfield got the tails up, started to win a few tackles, scored a goal from a mistake by the goalkeeper, and it changes the game. And Rovers are very susceptible to that at the minute. So I definitely think Huddersfield should have some confidence, but I do think Rovers are the better footballing team, and I do think they're going to have to get the season back on track. So whether that's me hoping so there's not another meltdown that I have to deal with at work, or whether it's the reality. I think they'll just edge it 2-1.
Well, to avoid a meltdown for our work, if you like, being this, I'm going to go for 2-1 Town, a smash and grab. I think you're exactly right. I think Rovers would be better, but I just this is very Town. You like talk about how rubbish they are. Things look annoying, and then it's a bit like that Sunderland game that we won 2-1. Just go win. And you're like, that's annoying. That proves everything I've said. It's rubbish.
I think the best thing I could say for Huddersfield is I wouldn't be shocked if that happened, and most of the rest of the season I would have been shocked if they'd gone to Ewood and won. And I do think this is their best chance. They're going to go and win and beat Blackburn. This is their best opportunity to do so.
Yeah. So I'm going 2-1. I think Sorba's going to be right up for this return to Ewood Park. So I'm backing him to get. And then I think Tom Lees might score in this one from a set piece. That feels very Town. So yes. Anyway, gents, let's move on to the mailbag. We've got a few questions, Elliot. I think they're gonna. You've probably covered them, but we'll do quickly. Cam Fry, he asks, what impact will the 3-0 beating have on Blackburn? Will that be fear or defiance?
Yeah, I don't know. Jon doesn't tend to put a lot of stock in previous results, albeit usually you're talking something that happened 6 months ago rather than 6 weeks ago, or not even that, 4 weeks ago. So I don't know. It's a different game now. I think Rovers still got the same issues, I suppose they did. Huddersfield, I think naturally playing at home suits Huddersfield probably more than it does away from home. But the same, I suppose the way Huddersfield score their goals will probably be very similar. Maybe there'll be a little bit less spacing behind without Bergzorg, without his pace to really exploit that. But I think the goals will come from similar routes if they are to score. So I don't know. I think it will have some bearing, but I don't think Rovers are going to change how they play, because I don't think they'll look at the 3-0 and change their approach, because they've not done that all season, and that's why they've conceded 52 goals.
Yeah, fair. Joel Garner asks, you kind of touched on this, but do you think Rovers will be dragged right down to the relegation scrap? You talked to it is relegation form, but yeah, thoughts?
No, is my gut feeling. I think they've got a lot of good players offensively. They've got to sort the defence out, and I think the defence is underperforming and its players out of form rather than that is the natural level of the defence. They weren't terrible defensively last season, and it's the same back four that finished last season that finished 7th. So the goalkeeper's changed. That's been a big problem. But as I've already alluded to, I think Ainsley Pez will probably be in goal instead of Walstead at the weekend. So that's something new that might just solidify things a little bit. They just need to build some confidence, Rovers. I've even suggested on our podcast that they should change formation, maybe go to a back three, just to build a bit of confidence. They just really need a scrappy 1-0 that goes in off someone's backside and a clean sheet, if I'm being honest. So I don't think they will get relegated. I don't think they'll get dragged into it, but they've got to do something. They've got to change something. They need a spark from somewhere, and they'll be hoping that happens at the weekend.
Yes, sounds good. And my final question, this is for all of us, bring you back in, Tom. Josh Hallowell, he normally asks us to do interpretive dance. However, he's asked us, what's the most important item in a full English breakfast? Discuss and justify. And if Blackburn Rovers were a breakfast food item, what would it be? I'll ask you that first, Elliot, because that's what the fans want to know. And then we'll discuss our full English important items.
I think they would be a croissant, because I think they look good on the eye. I think they can, when they're at their best, when they're fresh, when they're straight out of the oven, they're really good, aren't they? We've all had a little trip to France. We've all been to walked down to the boulangerie. We've all had a fresh one. Not the same if you go into the shops. If you go into Aldi and get a pack of croissants, not the same. And they can sometimes lack a bit of substance. You can be a bit hungry at 11 o'clock because you've not done. And Rovers are a bit like that, because sometimes they can be lovely between both boxes, nice on the eye, but they're a bit soft in both penalty boxes. Don't have that real punch. Don't fill you up. So I'm going for a slightly aged croissant.
Nice. I'm clipping that. That's the tweet line that we're going to bait Rovers fans with. Yeah, so gents, right, come on. I'll give us 2-3 minutes on this. Most important item in a full English and why, Tom, first.
It's a bloody great question. That, I mean, I think your sausage is very integral. It's got to be a very good sausage. Clip that. That's a funny little clip.
Out of context.
Yeah. And then I'd actually go, I mean, because you can have a variation of eggs, but I'm a fried egg kind of person. I think if you've got a good fried egg, then you can't go very wrong, because you've almost got like another sauce there with the yolk. That's what I always think. It's like, if you might like red sauce, you might like brown sauce. Surprise, egg yolk. Boom.
Egg yolk. Fair. Elliot, what's the most
like
important?
eggs. I'm gonna.
Do you like eggs?
No, I know it's poor. It's got to be a sausage for me. If I'm thinking, if I was looking at a menu, I was like, why is there none of X? It would be like, why is there not a sausage on that? I like bacon, but sausage is always the star of the show. I love a hash brown. I think that is definitely an underrated. Cooked breasts that don't have hash browns as standard is very poor. I like a hash brown, but yeah, it's got to be. If you've got a good sausage, that's what elevates the meal, isn't it? That's what elevates your fry up. And now I'm very hungry.
Yeah. Well, if you don't like eggs, I'm going to be a bit controversial. I'm not a full English lover. I would never choose it necessarily. I know. God, this guy.
What do you go for if you go out for breakfast? Then are you like an eggs Benedict man?
I am. Yeah, I just like eggs, man. I
Woke,
don't know. I just
back on the woke train.
Yeah. Brady Frost woke agenda. My issue with full English, right, is it's a lot of stuff, which is like I'm never that hungry in the morning, so that's me. I accept that, and it can bring joy to people. That's fine, but there's a lack of sauce. Right, this is what annoys me. It's all very
tin
like
tomatoes are for. Tin tomatoes are excellent for that.
Or baked beans as well.
Yeah, no, but this is what I mean. So I would probably say it's the baked beans, because you get no sauce whatsoever. So you have to use the beans to combine everything. So
I do agree. If you've got toast left and you've run out of sauce, and because I don't have eggs, obviously, whereas Tom's obviously got his yolk as backup, that is a disappointment. I do think the sauce element is integral, so you've got to get that balance right.
Yeah, this is the thing. I'd much rather, like, if we're going to talk about proper bloke breakfast, because clearly people think I'm a lefty snowflake, I'd much rather have like a sausage sandwich with a bit of ketchup in there, or you like a bacon sandwich.
Yeah,
I just think
can do that.
Yeah, but Brady, come on, that wasn't the question, mate. Come on, you're like a politician, dodging the question. What is the most integral part?
I told you, baked beans, man, because you need a bit of sauce, because it's all just meat. It's just like nothing else. Clip that. Josh Hallowell, we talked about breakfast food items. He said, for clarity, he thinks Town would be one of those small boxes of cornflakes that are inadequate in volume and very uninspiring.
Yeah.
I'd imagine the one, them variety packs you would get, it would be the one that always gets left at the end.
Yeah.
Probably Rice Krispies, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, the one that no one wants.
Just normal cornflakes.
Hang on, Elliot. We can slag them off. You can't, don't you know?
Sorry, I was just suggesting what you might say. It wasn't what I was
saying. Yeah, well, we'll see. I'm going to tweet that out, actually, because it's like when we did that, when we played Wigan that time, Tom, and we were like, what's everyone's favourite pie? And I think that's the most engagement we've ever got on anything ever.
Yeah.
Good chat. So we'll see. But thanks to Josh for that question. And thanks to Cam and Joel as well. And thanks to Elliot and Tom for joining us on this one. Tom and I will be back to preview the next game. Also want to thank Magic Rock, our sponsors, as always. Don't forget about the code. And yeah, that'll do it for this week. So ta-ta for now, and up the town.